Ohayou gozaimasu. Guten Morgen. Good morning, everyone. I'm simply finishing my last cup of coffee, my 1.5 cup of coffee. And I decided a while back that every now and then I wanted to take a moment just to, in my coffee reflections, in these moments where I'm just feeling particularly more lucid than usual, reflect on certain things about language learning or languages in general, anything that might be useful to people who are trying to learn a language. And one thing I really feel strongly about and would like to touch on today. Let's put it this way: there's a trend towards learning languages fast, and on the one hand, this is kind of cool because we've uncovered through people like Tim Ferriss and Benny Lewis and others, we've discovered all these wonderful, inventive, innovative ways of uh, uh, techniques and methods to getting a lot of information in our brains at a faster pace. There's a downside to this though, and it's the same downside that we encounter to just about any in any other sphere of learning or muscle toning or anything else, exercise, sports. It's the same thing, which is that building fast has its consequences and it's a trade-off. The first thing that you sort of have to decide when it comes to learning a language is, one, do I want to be able to operate short term in my language? That is, do I want to be able to do a select number of specific things, and with the possibility that I'll forget how to do them later, but maybe I'll be able to learn them again the way that I picked them up the first go round. So what would that look like? An example of that would be you're going to Japan, you want to be able to maybe say a few select phrases in Japanese with pretty good pronunciation, not perfect, but good enough. Be able to exchange certain words so that you don't want to only be able to say where's the bathroom, but where's a good restaurant, where's the hotel we're staying at, etc. So you'll want to be able to use these sort of short-term learned patterns of speaking. And that's great. That is terrific. It's very important to identify that as your goal so that you can then implement that as your strategy, learning those specific phrases and such. And there are techniques for that. You can quickly get a sense of how the grammar works, not extensively, just like for the little bits of information you'll need to be able to understand when people respond to you, not to have a full conversation beyond like, oh, the bathroom is that way, or your hotel can be found if you go 2 blocks to, east and then 1 block west or north or whatever. I hopefully you won't be told to go 2 blocks east and 1 block west. That'd be annoying. But then there's this other path that's very important and does not, these techniques and strategies that are out there for learning language fast are not going to apply here, and that's actually being able to master a language even sufficiently enough to feel like you could be in a number of conversations, or you can watch a television program like an anime, or pick up a book or a manga and be able to understand it. And this is a very different goal. Sometimes I see people put both of those goals in the same bracket, and let me say more about that in a second. But in order to master a language, you have to be willing to put in some deep time. That doesn't mean you have to study 3 or 4 hours every day. In fact, I recommend people who have busy lives just dedicate 15 to 20 minutes if that's all you can give a day, though. Preferably as many days of the week as possible, if not absolutely every day. And to set a certain time period in which to do that. Case in point, I've shared before when I was trying to relearn German after, practically failing it in high school because none of these ideas, these practical means of learning were available to me. I was doing it textbook style, but we had kind of a teacher who wasn't really leading the class very well. I can't blame the teacher, though. I also had very little motivation to learn. And I want to say more on that too in a second. That's going to be critical. The problem for me at first was not how do I learn German, but how much German do I want to learn? What point do I want to get to? I don't want to just learn a few phrases. I'm not going to Germany anytime soon. What are my specific reasons or goals for learning this? And do I want to get to a certain level of mastery? If mastery is kind of a trigger word for you, if you're like, that's hard for me to imagine mastering, okay, fine. Let's call it proficiency. Let's call it a certain level of proficiency of the language. That means that you can speak it and understand it. That is, you can comprehend it and produce it at a sufficient enough level to reach your goal. So in my case, I just wanted to be able to perform some mildly useful conversation, talk about my day a little bit. And then the longer term goal, or the bigger goal, was, because I also study and continue to teach philosophy in addition to languages, to be able to dissect certain words or phrases from important philosophical texts and be able to use those, understand the importance of those words that are not readily available in English, be able to understand the deeper etymology, or at least start to pick apart what those words really mean. So that's a longer term goal, and that's one that I've not reached yet, but have made some progress toward. But when I started, I had to decide, okay, well, if I want to be able to mostly talk about my day and have certain conversations, I gave myself a year. I said to myself, I'm going to give myself a year from the date that I started to every day do some form of work, somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes every day. Often it was more like an hour, and listen and write and read. Now, I didn't do it perfectly. There were some days I missed. It was maybe a handful, though. Maybe out of the whole 365, out of the whole year, I probably missed something like 5 or 6 days total, and that was very important. Consistency then is the key. Not strategy, but consistency. You might say, well, are there things you're saying there's nothing I can do wrong as long as I'm consistent? No, you can definitely waste your time in some ways. You can also waste a lot of time on these apps trying to get points instead of really interpret and take in the new words and phrases. The best thing you can do if you're using an app like Duolingo is not to just use the app, but to write notes, take notes from the app. Oh, I see, this is how I say that. Or, oh, I'm noticing for the first time how Duolingo keeps asking me to do it in this word order. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to make sure I got that in my system. People who don't do that just don't excel as quickly. But here's the number one, and this is my main important piece of advice for the day. If your goal is a sense of mastery, that is proficiency. That is, you want to get to a point where you can understand anime or television shows, and you can speak with people and about more than just where the bathroom is and where to find your hotel and so forth, which train to get on. If you want to have that, then there is one, and in fact it's really two, most critical skills, most important, more important than any app, more important than any course, than any teacher you could come across. The most important things that you can have is patience, and the second one is to have self-discipline. And part of that self-discipline piece is going to require you to have a motivation for doing this in the first place, and to be willing to lose that motivation from time to time. People say, well, as long as you have your motivation, your goal, you're good. But that's not true. The people who I see actually acquire these skills, including myself, over time, are the people who have been patient with themselves over time, understood, yes, this is going to take a while for me to really become proficient and not just like parrot certain phrases that I can learn in any traveler's book. I'm going to have to be very patient with myself in starting to think in this language. You're having to reprogram your brain, and you're having to take it on at almost this sort of spiritual level of, this is something that's going to become part of me. It's very personal, and for that reason it takes a while. It has to, they say every 7 years the body regenerates itself in terms of its cellular structure. That is, all the cells replace themselves, are substituted or replaced by new cells at approximately every 7 years. Different organs take shorter or longer periods of time. Well, language is no different. And in the case of something like Japanese, it may be 7 years before you really come to a point where you can, without thinking much about it, just go into a conversation, totally free flow with somebody, or listen or watch something and understand like 80 to 90% of what you just heard and enjoy it. That takes a while because it takes time for a language to really seep into our neural structure, if you will, or the brain. In the meantime, we have to take on this attitude of seriousness about it, at least sincerity. Maybe that's a better word, sincerity about it. I really do want to learn this. If I'm not sure and I'm just dabbling, that's okay. I just need to be aware that until I take on that level of sincerity, I'm just dabbling, and I will never really learn more than a few words and how to count to 10 or something like that. So these are the most important things in terms of increasing your proficiency, are patience and self-discipline. Because when you lose your motivation, and you will, 7 years is a long time, or 5 years, or 2 years. 1 year for me even was kind of long. In that period of time, your attitude is going to change. Your feelings, your emotions are very transient in this life. And how you feel about something one day, the excitement, the intrigue, the mystery, is going to feel like boring. Can't believe I'm still doing this. Why did I start this in the first place? You will reach that point from time to time. But if you remind yourself of that goal, remember that 1 year goal for me, I'm going to do this until I reach that goal. And I'm going to do it and I'm going to enjoy it to the best of my ability, but I'm going to do it even when I'm not enjoying it that much. The truth is that even in those moments where I'm like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this right now. It's 10 p.m. and I haven't done my German yet, and I haven't read anything in German. I haven't listened to anything. Okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes and I'm going to read a paragraph or a page of German. And that was it. What ends up almost always happening is I almost always end up enjoying it by the end of the process. I usually want to read more. I end up reading maybe a whole chapter or 2 pages instead of just 1 page, because as I'm delving into it again, I'm remembering the enjoyment of it. But even then, that will not happen every time. So patience, 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 but also being able to push yourself when your motivation or your goal is not enough to pull you is equally important as well. So the students that I've seen actually make it, and they've made it in 2 years, 3 years time, they're writing in Japanese, they are speaking in Japanese, they're doing a monstrously good job. 2-3 years time. It's incredible. They are very self-disciplined people. They're very creative people. They also don't just let apps tell them what to do. They figure out for themselves, hey, this is what I want. This is something that feels important to understand, or I've heard sensei or teachers say that this is how this works. I'm going to explore that a little bit and try out some phrases, maybe writing some phrases, or just reading lots of example sentences of those out loud, etc. That's my cup of joe advice for the morning. I hope that you take that and you run with it, and know that no matter how many fast-paced programs you find, 3 months before and you can speak whatever Dutch or whatever, just know that there's a difference between the parroting of language of bits of language that looks like it's fluency, and actual fluency, which is going to require more of you. And really finding that part of yourself that can be that patient, that self-disciplined, is going to pay off in more than just language. It's going to pay off in life. Got deep fast. See you next time.